Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of Inspire Career Spotlight on Careers, a video podcast series where I provide you important information from all over the career management space to keep you up to date and help you manage your careers. And today we are going to be talking about careers, but a very important aspect of careers, money. Because I don't hear a lot of people talking about money out there unless they're talking about compensation negotiation, but there's a lot more money exchanging hands and to be considered in the whole career management realm. So with that, welcome to my guest, Nicholle Overkamp. Welcome, Nicholle.
Thank you, Kathy.
Nicholle is the owner and founder. She's CEO and founder of Wilcox Financial Services and Powerhouse Money Coaching. And in full disclosure, Nicholle is my financial planner. So I'm just sharing that. I just complete transparency here. And Nicholle is also a national public speaker and an author. So she's got a lot of great credentials behind her. I'm going to let her talk about herself a little bit. But this is a continuation of an interview that we did about 3 years ago, I guess. It's been quite a while, and I wanted to bring Nicholle back. I wanted to talk about financial strategies for executives in career transition, as well as preparing for and on the other end of. So I just thought it would be great, but we could kind of continue that conversation from a few years ago and build on that. You can find that on YouTube if you're looking to go back and see what we talked about a couple years ago. But the market has changed, both from a job search perspective as well as financial market. So Nicholle, why don't you just talk a little bit about yourself? Just introduce yourself here. And then I got a lot of things I want to talk to you about because I'm seeing a lot of stuff out there. But please share with the audience a little bit about your background.
Sure. Yeah. So I have been practicing as a financial planner for over 15 years, which also feels like an out-of-body experience when I say that. But, I just fell in love with the industry when I was really young. And in 2012, I founded my own company because I was really exhausted and what is that word? Just disenfranchised. It's my brain's not working today. It's Friday for everybody listening. Whatever. You get the point, right?
But I think you were discouraged too, because I don't want to take words out of your mouth here, but this is a very heavily male-dominated industry, and I know you went through a lot of stuff there too.
Yes, discouraged is a beautiful word. Disgusted, a lot of D words, I guess. But I founded the firm because I wanted to create a space that at the time just didn't exist, and for me, it was really important to start to build a place where people can come to get advice, information, plans, results, and not be sold a product, and in doing so, we've been able to create a boutique financial planning firm where we are, of course, doing the traditional things, investments and insurance. But what's special about us is the planning that we're doing and incorporating the coaching and really working with our clients throughout the year as their partner in every part that you go through in life, right? And everything your money touches. Often it's really nice to know that you have someone in your corner giving you unbiased information, but also helping you avoid unintended consequences. And more importantly, and especially, in your world, Kathy, like going through transition, career transition, expected or unexpected, the more you plan, the better equipped you are to navigate what is unexpected and to not feel completely stressed out by that, and so we're really good at taking overwhelm, dismantling that, and creating clarity and confidence around everything that you want to achieve, and importantly, just how you want to feel.
Yeah, and it's such an important piece of it because when we talk about career management doesn't happen in a vacuum, and it really is a holistic process. You have to consider what's happening with your family, where you want to live. Maybe you've got issues happening with your kids. You don't want to relocate because they're at their last year of high school. Like I hear everything from my clients. They have so many things happening. I mean, this is a life, it's just another slice of life within the bigger context of life, but it's so important. And as I have said before on different podcasts about this, is that money is your salary is your greatest really source of wealth, right, throughout your life and how you utilize that. So as we're talking about career management strategies, thinking about it every step of the way is important. It doesn't happen at the salary negotiation table. So let's talk a little bit. I wanted these questions have come from my talking with my clients.
Yeah.
And so if we've had this conversation, folks, I'm talking to you out there because you may recognize some of this stuff here. So let's start out first with, in this market, people they're always looking for opportunities, right? So when we're talking about executives, and this can really apply to anybody, but we are talking about executives like VP levels and up, C-suite. And some people have very high net worths and they're making anywhere from $200,000 base or 300 up to close to $1 million all in. Just depends, right?
Yeah.
So let's say that the first scenario here is somebody wants to explore. They got a job right now and they're happy, but they want to explore and they want to see what's out there. And because they're highly marketable, they got great experience, very likely they're going to get a job offer within the next several months. So, Nicholle, what is your recommendation for executives that are thinking about this? They're in a position they don't have to panic. They have plenty of time to plan and they already have a steady source of income. What things should they be thinking of ahead of time before they go out to the market? Yes, we're going to get their resume updated, LinkedIn, they do all those things. But from a financial standpoint, what kind of things would you like them to be thinking about?
I want them to think about, I always say, like, start with the end in mind, right? That is the best place to go. So, and what I mean by that is if you are, and I call them season shifters, I work with also a lot of executives, and oftentimes they get the scratch where they're feeling a little bit bored, or maybe they're not challenged. A lot of our clients have this common denominator of a growth mindset, or they want to make an impact. They're not feeling that anymore in their heart, and they want to do that. And so, in starting with the end in mind, what do you want to be doing? Who do you want to be working with? Where do you want to be working? And how do you want to feel? What's the lifestyle? Because oftentimes, especially in that upper echelon of executive C-suite, sometimes you're also thinking about, man, when can I peel back and do consulting work? And or if I choose not to stay at this level, can I afford to change? And a lot of the time, the assumption is I'm earning really good money. I don't need a financial plan. I don't have to worry about that. And I think too that people think of a financial planner as like just someone to manage my investments, right? But at the end of the day, what I want you to think about is, well, if you were to change careers, what are the things that you need to know about, think about? And that is from everything from your salary, but also your assets, your benefits, your insurances, that entire dynamic. And then if you do change, what is going to change about your schedule? And will that also work? And what costs are we not thinking about? So I know for some folks, and depending on what they're doing, if they make a transition to a higher level, they may not be able to be fully remote anymore. So now what happens to the cost of childcare? What happens to travel? And will you need to move? Will you need to travel a lot? There's just so many variables. And so the best thing and gift that you can give yourself, and this doesn't sound sexy, but it is a financial plan. It is knowing all of your different numbers and the levers to pull so that with like confidence, you can take the thing, the job, the career that sounds the most attractive to you and know exactly what your boundaries are, your bumpers rather, of what you can accept and or what you must negotiate, or you're going to have to tap out because you're going to have further stress down the road that maybe you just didn't think about.
Yeah, and you said something else in there that I heard, and I want to just talk about it for a minute because I hear it a lot from executives. They want to make a different kind of impact. But by the time they come to me, they want to, they think immediately, well, I got to do my resume. Let's change that. Let's talk about how to kind of get me where I want to go.
Yeah.
From a career management standpoint, that's awesome. We love to do that. But what often stops them from necessarily going after what they want, maybe it's a transition into nonprofit work. And they would decide that that's what they want to do. Is it they're like, well, I'm not ready to take that step back. I don't know if I can do that. I'm not in a financial position to do that. So are there certain strategies that you recommend that people can take maybe on a long-term basis so that maybe if they're in their, I don't know, mid-40s, early 50s or whatever, and that's something that they know that's what they're going to want to do even before they retire.
Yeah.
Right? Things that they can be doing now to consider. So maybe that next step down the road, they're in a position to do that.
Totally. Yeah. So part of looking at that is lifestyle, of course, like really understanding what you spend. Most people don't. And when I say most people, I mean down to the engineers and the CPAs that I have as clients. Like we we kind of know, but we really don't. And so that's the first is really understanding what you spend. And part two of that is of what you're currently spending, how much of it is unintentional and you really don't need, but you kind of got in a little bit of a habit or routine, or maybe you got lazy? Let's call a spade a spade. Like life is busy, we did the thing. And so, really understanding that spend is critical because the more you can refine it and get intentional, allows you to better understand the lifestyle that number one, you like, you don't want to give up, but then we can figure out the numbers from there. So, especially for those of you who are in the grind of a very intense career and 10 years from now you want to shift and maybe do that nonprofit work, we will be able to then reverse engineer here's how much you're going to need to save so that if you make that shift, your life doesn't have to change. And sometimes that looks like you shift and make less income, but you stop saving because you've already funded your retirement. So you're able to take a 40% decrease, right? Because what we don't always realize is that we're not having to save anymore, but our taxes are less. So there's a lot of different variables there. Or, we can always plan to supplement your income down the road as well. Or a lot of the time too, I think people, we get so busy, and especially if you really most of my execs, like they're working long hours, and then most of the time they're taking care of the kids and everybody else, and then they get to themselves, and in doing that busyness, we really don't realize where all the money is going. And so when you're able to refine that and look at life differently too, and look at what really matters versus what doesn't, or what you got caught up in, we are often surprised too at how much money we're able to save and what we're able to change, tweak, or downsize for exchange of a better life, a better quality of life too. And so often, just opening those conversations, and when you're working with a third party who's got that objective view, it's easier for us to spot opportunities, but that kind of asks a question because we don't really pause often and do that and look inside and peel back the onion a little bit.
Well, that's just why working with somebody like me from a career management standpoint help when I help people do their resumes and LinkedIn, just another set of eyes that I'm giving you a different perspective.
Yeah.
People just tend to underestimate what they do, right? So when I come in and I see the things and I'm like, no, we got to focus on this is really great stuff. It's just having another set of eyes on things, and we think we have a good perspective on stuff. And I'm not saying we don't, but there's always benefit in that additional third view, third eye, on there. And let's not forget too, ladies, let's talk about this quickly. Women are still only making 82 cents on the dollar for men. So, when you're talking about this and you're thinking about the long-term strategy, it's even more important for women to be thinking about that every step of the way, right, Nicole?
Well, yeah, and I mean, the reality is we also are living longer most of the time than our partners if we are with someone, and or we're choosing to leave our partner because we've decided we don't need them anymore. you know
Gray divorce, I think they're calling
Yes,
that now.
yes,
Yeah.
that's right, and so it is recognizing, like, shoot, like, if I choose to leave my partner, what can I afford? What does that look like? And then importantly, understanding what you need if you choose to go solo is so empowering, because then all of the sudden you release this belief of I have to versus I have the option to. Right. And that goes in relationships, but with money and everything else, and living long. And my female clients, I mean, they are thriving and having a grand old time and traveling all over the place in their 70s, right? Which is beautiful, but it's expensive. And so you want to plan for that, because if you're feeling great because you took care of yourself and you did all the right things, you don't want to feel poor and not be able to do the things that you've just saved your whole life to do when you're older. So that is also a really important thing.
Yeah, good point, good point. And women live longer than men statistically too.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
we
Yeah.
kind of have to plan that out. Okay. All right, so let's talk about though the executive that it's Friday afternoon, maybe,
Mhm.
the word comes down that maybe you're part of a reduction in force, or maybe something happened and it is just you, whatever.
Yeah.
Forced transition, right? You didn't expect something, you kind of got caught off guard.
Mhm.
What is your best recommendation for folks, Nicholle? Then, the first thing they do is they look at that. Hopefully you've got a severance
Mhm.
package. Hope,
Right.
but not always, right? But hopefully you do. And oftentimes
Mhm.
they're so very concerned about what's in there, but there's bigger implications, aren't there? So what are the first thing you want people to think about when that word comes down?
So this sounds like I'm selling myself, and I'm totally not. But you need to get a financial plan if you don't have one already, because what happens is people panic, and sometimes that comes over as fear and anxiety. And what do you do when you have fear and anxiety? Sometimes unhealthy things, and those unhealthy things can cost money that you maybe didn't intend on doing, and or you might end up being trigger happy and saying yes to a job that you don't want to say yes to and you're going to be miserable at. And so the value in having a plan, and I just had this conversation with the clients that I onboarded. Sadly, both of them were laid off at the same time. And they're like, oh my gosh, we know we need to do this because we have a lot of habits we need to change. We have no idea what to do with our money. We have a lot of goals and we just want to know our parameters. And one of them wanted to find traditional work. The other one wanted to do consulting, and they were afraid to spend the money to invest in the planning. And after we got into it, the first meeting, they said this was the best investment we could have ever made because we didn't realize how much we didn't know. And part of that is the habits. We think that if all of a sudden we retire, we lose our job, we're just going to change our how we do things, right? We're going to change our day-to-day behaviors and our habits and what we do. To hell you are, especially if you have a spouse and kids. That is not a light switch we turn on and off. It is a lot harder than you think. And so if you can have somebody there to hold you accountable, but guide you on decisions and give you permission to spend levers versus accidentally spending money quicker than you should or not recognizing again your run rate into how long you can even go without a job and not stressing and finding the right thing, that is so important because we just don't realize where it's going, how we're doing it, and sometimes it's very reactive behavior versus proactive behavior, and that's not good for anyone. And most of the time it's my folks who are earning $1 million, 800,000, like they're the ones that need it the most because it is so interesting the psychology that you go through when you know you're making a ton of money. We tell ourselves like, "Oh, I'll just make more. It's fine. It doesn't matter what happened this month," right? And when that shifts, it can really lock you up. And so we want to prepare for that, and then importantly, make sure that we're tax planning depending on what kind of severance you had, what kind of stock options you had, and so on, because you may need to liquidate some of those. So we really need to have careful conversations on the strategy around that.
Yeah, because I think there can be sometimes a tendency, because I've been in that position too years and years ago where, you get the severance package, you got a nice lump sum of money. Like, what do you do with that?
Yeah.
Right? Maybe you should be investing it. Maybe you should be spending it. Who knows? But there's a
Mhm.
lot of options, but sometimes you don't always think about the options, or you just automatically think about what you did last time.
Right.
Maybe that's not the right thing to do. And by the way, everybody, everything is still, you should consider trying to negotiate that severance package too. And if you need help with that, let me know because I do have someone that I can recommend to you. I wouldn't help you with that because there's very particular
Mhm.
negotiating with the severance packages in particular, exit packages. But I do have a friend that can or a connection that can help with that because you can oftentimes get a better package. So don't just sign the first thing you get either, and don't just automatically just go spending it either. So definitely okay. Yeah, I mean really because people do. I just signed it because I was afraid they were going to take it away. Yeah, but you can still ask for something else. And if they say no, they say no. They're not going to take it away.
Mhm.
But sometimes I have seen people get a lot of money based on when you work with someone who does that, strictly does that on an ongoing basis. There's things that you don't even think about. So just something else to think about. Okay, so the planning piece, not to panic, but just think about because now statistics are saying that executives are out of work an average of up to 9 months now.
Yeah.
And I just saw that statistic yesterday. And I will tell you, I think that's pretty accurate based on what I'm seeing. Everybody's getting jobs, folks. Please hear me out. People are talking about this crippled job market. It's tough, but you know what? It's always tough. There's always something happening.
Mhm.
There's always things going on. If you want a job, you can get the job. Like, it's just a matter of really digging in, and it just may take a little bit longer.
Mhm.
That is absolutely true, but everybody is getting the jobs they want, and everybody's getting more money too. So let's talk about this because, and I kind of say that as a lead in, what about these folks that are out of work for an extended period of time? They thought, and I hear this a lot too, I didn't think it would take me this long. When they come to me, they're like,
Mhm.
Kathy, oh my God, right? So what can
Yeah.
we do now? Yeah, all right, now it's already been 6 months, by the time we start. Okay. I talked to some guy this week, he's already been out of work 14 months,
Wow.
right? 14 months before we even started talking. So there is two couple things. I want to know what your opinion is on after you've been out of work a long time, what should you be thinking? But also, I'm hearing a lot too, by the time people come to me at that point in time, they're
Mhm.
like, you know what? I'll just take anything. I don't mind if I take a step back. I'll take anything.
Mhm.
And of course, everybody's got to make their own decision what's good and what's good for them. But by the same token, there's some implications with that as well. And, we can't judge on what people may have going on, but I hate to see people do that as a reactionary measure when there can be other steps they can take and they don't really have to take that because that's more of a long-term gig. So, Nicholle, what kind of things should people do when they're facing, I've already been out of work 6 to 8, maybe a year?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, first, when our clients are going through that, I mean, my first comment truly is actually talk to Kathy, because what I think they don't understand also in what is unique about this job market is that you have to look at how transferable your skills are, and getting creative and looking at things a little bit differently than we used to, And so again, instead of reacting, we need to respond thoughtfully and really pull in your almost creating your own like board of advisors. So between your planner,
I like that.
your coach, and grabbing those experts, because this is also and Kathy, you're probably seeing this too. Like I truly believe like this is a very critical inflection point in a lot of different areas, and you need to do things differently than you did them before. So it may take more work, more effort, it may take a better personal brand and really working with someone with Kathy who understands that, because people are buying differently, not just from the consumer perspective, but from the hiring perspective. And so it's so important that you understand what that looks like and then be honest with yourself. Have you maybe been a little complacent, and what skills do you need to learn to level up, to be relevant in this space? And I see a lot of the time, and this happens with money, but in conversations, it's that fear of like, well, I'm really overwhelmed by it. I don't understand it, so I'm not going to do it. From planning to learning AI to new technology, whatever it is. And so, if you're extended on a longer break, I'll say, than you thought you would be, that is when you really double down on hiring the experts and investing in that, because in not doing so, you could be extending your pain point. And often we just don't always see it that way. And so you have to ask for help. And the sooner you do it, the better, because I cannot stress enough how self sabotaging it can be to go it alone. And especially in the Western New York area, for those of you who are listening locally, in the Buffalo, Western New York area, it is very much a network. It is very much a community, and so that is everything. And that is not necessarily financial advice, but it is the advice that I give all of our clients, because there's only so much we can plan for and do, especially if you're new coming to us. We didn't plan for these extended emergencies. Typically we try to plan for those that 6 to 12 month run rate, no matter what. However, that's not always the case, and so you really want to think about who's in your zone, like who is around you that you can ask for help that you didn't think of, and who do they know, and then get creative. So, you may need to make money. You may not want to go into debt from this break. So, where can you do consulting or collaborations or partnerships that are very per diem or maybe part time while you're still seeking that higher level position? And Kathy, I'm sure you have tons of advice for that and experience in helping bridge that gap while you're waiting for what that next is.
Yeah. And, this is great time to put the plug in for your network because
Mhm.
85, like up to 85% of jobs, this is the statistics. And I know you know this in
Yeah.
the heart. of your hearts, anybody listening, 85% of jobs are gotten through networking. And I've said this before publicly. I've said it on my LinkedIn. And the last time I said it on LinkedIn, I got people messaging me about it. So I
Mhm.
know it hits the spot is that if you're out of work for 9 months, I'm going to challenge you that that's because you're applying for jobs online and you're not leveraging your network.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that that's the only reason, because certainly when you're higher up in the job pyramid, right, there's less jobs up here. We know this. So, it's not an all inclusive statement, but primarily speaking, it's a lot of it is it's easy to press the buttons and then complain about the process. Whereas you got to get out there and you got to talk to people. And that's how you hasten that journey. And that's how you cut down on the time. But I think that the key here is that, you may have to do some things in between, but you also have to be looking at your finances and making those investments. And sometimes it is counterintuitive, right? You got to spend money to make money, or, we always have heard that, but also to say sometimes you just kind of got to bite the bullet and you got to say, look, I got to do this because it's going to pay itself back. And I do believe like working with a person like me is an investment.
Mhm.
Working with any professional is, whether it's you, me, or anybody else. This is just a plug for getting support in any way.
Mm.
Your doctor's an investment because that's an investment in your health. So it's not just about this, but that's sometimes you just got to do that. And you think you can do it on your own, but when you have that additional support, it does help. But and let's talk about too that not all of this is just one thing, meaning one executive in course of maybe 2, 3 years even,
Mhm.
could be going through all of these things,
Yeah.
right? They're kind of what I like to call fat and happy in the beginning of the process, and then a couple months into it, maybe they have they have an idea. One day they're like, you know what, I need more, and then they're out looking. Then they land that job, and this happens more than you might think. They're there for 2 months, and all of a sudden, word comes down from corporate. Now they're out of a job. So now they've got a couple of these scenarios we're talking about. So with that in mind, Nicole,
Mhm.
these folks with these large net worths that it's sometimes, it's kind of easy to get comfortable with that.
Yeah.
What is the one thing or maybe two things, I don't know what from your perspective that you would like individuals to think about at this level that is just good financial practice so that whatever of these things that are coming up, and maybe a couple of them are coming up in 1 year at a time and you don't
Yeah.
know, like what would you like people to be keeping in mind or to be pre-planning for or thinking about that's going to help them when any of these scenarios happen?
Yeah. So I think the first is when you have that plan, you know exactly where you stand and if things change, what happens, right? And how much you can afford and what also would need to change. Really having that conversation of what would I keep or kill, right? What's that exercise? And then, in the process, especially in working with couples too, it's having that candid conversation with your partner and saying, hey, if X happens, are you okay with what? X, Y, and Z. And really, when you can plan and prepare for that, even if it feels very hypothetical, and oftentimes it is, we engage in those conversations because giving yourself permission to think about scenarios in advance allows you to have conversations when you're not stressed, when you're not in a maybe heated moment, where you can have more thought behind them because and you're also planting the seed to start thinking about how could my partner maybe help or contribute, or how could we look at this differently, or if you're single, man, I really didn't think about getting extra income by Airbnb-ing my house or whatever the case may be, right? I mean, shoot, there's so many different ways to look at this, but ultimately, and it comes down to the underlying like theme here is the more you know your numbers, the more you understand your options, and the more flexible you can be without stress and overwhelm. And this does not matter how much wealth you've accumulated. It doesn't matter how much you are earning. It is very much a similar theme because you need to know those parameters. And importantly, and this, I'm saying this again for marriages, is that you also need to be prepared and make sure you're in a relationship where if the financial dynamic changes, your spouse is prepared to change the spending too. That is the number one problem I see. It is the number one argument that we face. And it sounds so silly, but until you're in it, you get it. And Those are all proactive things that you can do to prepare, but more importantly, dream. Talk about it. Talk about what your core values are as a family and what matters and what doesn't, and where did you maybe get a little sloppy? Where did you maybe fall, accustomed to just doing what everybody else is doing? And so it kind of creates a cool conversation, but also in that whole theme of planning, like, man, like, how do we want to live, and are the current things we're doing aligned with that?
Yeah, love that. So let me ask you this. What what is the biggest money mistake that you see that people that do have the money to spend? Because, we think about people only making mistakes if they don't have a lot, but or they think they are. They think they're more vulnerable, but I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
what is the number one money mistake you're seeing anybody making out there now?
So there's a couple. The first is just literally not paying attention, like not paying attention in understanding where their money is going or what it's doing. Often I see the mistake of people working with someone that was a college buddy or that they golf with or whatever the dynamic is, which is wonderful. You trust that person, but you can't trust without verification. I always say trust but verify. And so you really have to understand where your money is going, what it's doing, the fees that you're paying. Never ever make assumptions, no matter how much you love this person. Always ask good questions to make sure you understand. Because if something changes, again, you don't want to ruin that relationship either, right?
Mm.
So go in, eyes wide open, don't make assumptions. I see that mistake all the time, and people just not having any idea where their money is going, how much they're spending. Um, and another thing that I see too, a lot of the time is uh, people just assume it's always going to be okay. And so,
No, no, we never think that. No.
like, it's just, it's fine. I'm fine. We'll do that later. Right. Like, and this is more, I think on the male side of things, like in living through this myself, but then women will say, "Oh, I'm just too busy. I'll deal with it when." And then they make some mythical benchmark, whether it is when the kids are out of the house, when daycare is over, when I have more time. And so you want to tune into those subconscious like excuses that you're making, and really call a spade and ask yourself, like, if anything changed, am I okay with that? Am I prepared or am I anxious? And you might be totally okay, but man, is it really good to know you are and to verify that.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, you talk about I know you do talk a lot about, couples and money,
Mhm.
but, I'm a single woman, and I don't have to fight with anybody about money. I don't have to ask anybody to do anything. There's a lot of power in that too, you know?
There is.
What about folks out there that are, running their own individual
Mhm.
little empires here, like,
Yeah.
they don't have anybody to answer to but themselves.
Mhm.
Um, is that sometimes I don't know, I think it's a little harder it's but not the way people think it's harder.
Mhm.
Like, yes, I don't have a second income in terms of I don't have a partner, but by the same token, I don't have anybody to ask. I don't have
Mhm.
anybody that I have to answer to.
Yeah.
But I wonder, does that sometimes I feel like sometimes I hear from others, and I wonder if I do it myself, like that we tend to restrict ourselves in me that we don't think that we have enough to protect, or we feel that we have to think smaller maybe sometimes because there isn't that. Could you just talk about that a minute? Because I do talk to a lot of executives, women in particular, that are single women, and they still maybe usually have kids at home. My kids are gone now, but they had kids at home, and they talk a lot about that. Can we just have a word for those?
Absolutely. And it brings me to another mistake that I see happen all the time. But yes, in being single is a fabulous superpower. Like, you don't have anybody else spending your money, right? So it's good
And I
stuff.
don't have to leave it to anybody. Not my
Right.
yeah, I said,
Kathy, we're gonna plan to bounce your last check. No, I'm just kidding.
right.
But really, we're gonna have a lot of fun, and that is so empowering. But also make sure, to your point, Kath, like, you're all you got. So you gotta have a solid plan. You gotta have the proper insurances, because if shit hits the fan, you're it, right? But
Mhm.
do not also cut yourself out of opportunity because you're being too conservative.
That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. That's the word. Go
Yes.
ahead.
Yeah, and so I do see that. I think we often, as women, especially when we're single, we run this cycle in our head of what if I'm going to fail, what if I don't have any money, whatever the case may be, and we really hold ourselves back from so much opportunity versus just going for it. And again, when you know the numbers, you have permission to go for it. I say that to people all the time, like, yeah, go take that risk. If you fail, who cares? You're fine. You've got plenty of reserve. And to know that with like faith and conviction and confidence is absolutely huge, because one of the mistakes that I do see are, it's almost like that. I can't remember the exact phrase off the top of my head, but it's the broke syndrome, forever broke. And if you came from, and I deal with this, and I think Kathy, you might be able to like resonate with this a little bit, is like I grew up scrappy. When I started my business, it was scrappy. I started it myself. I didn't inherit it from anyone else. I was broke, and God forbid I misstep, I could have been homeless, and so really getting through that, then as the business grew, I didn't make the investments in myself that I should have early on to grow quicker, because I was so terrified of failing. I was so terrified of like, what if I don't succeed, and what if I don't have any money left? And so number one, I didn't invest in myself like I should have. But number two, I held way too much cash for way too long. And in holding too much cash, I missed out on really important market opportunity that, as an advice, like looking at what I missed out on is bleh, I want to throw up, but it's because I didn't have the confidence, I didn't have the conviction, and I didn't have somebody else coaching me that I needed. And we all need advisors, we all need coaches, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good you are at your craft or how much you think you know your numbers. When you're doing it yourself, you are in your own head. It doesn't matter. You're in your own head and you have blind spots. And so it's really important to either have somebody who believes in you when you don't, who has conviction, who can cheer you on, and who can see the potential you have before you see it. There's exponential value in that, and having that kind of support system, whether it is organic or paid for and hired, it doesn't matter. You must have someone like that in your corner. Wow, I think
Love
I
it.
got a little hot on that, but
It
Woo.
is
I was thinking like that's your element, man. You were like,
so
woo,
important. Yeah.
go for it. We just love. We're along for the ride, Nicholle. Sometimes we just lay on your back. We just go for it. Okay, we love it. So let me ask you this, because we're about out of time here, but I do want to end with off of the mistakes thing. I want to hear with just whatever's happening in the market today. We just started 2026. I don't know when you're going to be watching this, but we're just turning over a new year. And what kind of things might you, as a financial planner, be looking forward to in 2026 that we should be looking forward to as well?
well, full disclosure, I am a licensed financial advisor, so I cannot talk about the markets or investing or any
Right, absolutely. I'm not asking for day secrets.
without a script that's compliance approved. But what I'm looking forward to this year is everything that I looked forward to last year, frankly. It is the opportunity to continue to build on everything that I want to achieve. And for me, it is getting more refined and only saying things that are a hell yes, right? I'm only saying yes to the things that are a hell yes. I'm cutting out all the crap. And when I say all the crap, I mean places I'm spending my money that I really shouldn't be, and I just forgot about it, wasn't intentional. Maybe it's impulsive, right? I'm an impulsive person. I'm type A. I need to be busy all the time. So sometimes I mask that with a fake errand. So I'm really pulling back on some of that stuff that crept in, and just being super honest and vulnerable with myself and where I need to hone it in, because I want to be dead certain that everything that I invest in this year, and when we talk about our goals, they come with currency. They come with that currency of time, the currency of money, and the currency of energy. And how much are you willing to place on each one of those things in really getting specific? And so if you're looking forward to anything in 2026, do a complete and honest assessment of where you're spending your time and your energy and your money. And better yet, define your top priority and make sure that everything you do this year is aligned with that priority. And you will be so much more likely to accomplish your goals. And you must tune into your habits, your behaviors, what you do every single day. Those goals set the direction. The habits are the thing that gets it done. And wealth is built on what you do every single day. It's the boring stuff. It's the consistent stuff. It's the habits. It's the behaviors. It is not a get rich quick. It's not once in a while I bought a really great stock. I, got this big inheritance. No, no, no. If you don't tune into your behaviors and your habits and how you think and feel about money, good luck building any kind of sustainable wealth in keeping the money that you earn. And so really knowing what you want to accomplish and paying attention and setting those proper habits, behaviors for all of that is so important. It's a beautiful time of year to do all of that because wealth and money, like it touches everything you do. So it doesn't matter if your goal is health and wellness. I promise you, money's involved. If your goal is to feel more financially stable, I promise you, health and wellness is involved. And so we really have to think of wealth as a holistic thing, and making sure that your happiness and everything you're doing isn't unintentionally hurting another part of your life, and that's why you always feel out of balance. So that may have not been exactly what you were looking for, Kathy, but ultimately a new year doesn't mean new magic. It means that you need to decide whether or not you're going to take ownership in getting closer to something that you want, or if you're going to continue to make subtle excuses that are holding you back from that.
Oh, no, I wanted a nugget, and that's a beautiful nugget. That's all. Perfect. It's perfect. And
Okay.
it's a really a high note for us to end this
Mhm.
on too. So I hear the word alignment in there, alignment of soul and of spirit and of intentions. And that just kind of brings us back to everything that you should be doing in terms of your career anyway. It should be supporting your lifestyle. It is a
Yes.
means to the end, right? So
Mhm.
it all ties in, and that's exactly why I wanted you here today. So thank you, Nicholle. Thank you for your transparency. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your excitement, because I always like talking to you about this because you love what you do, and I love talking to you about it.
Mhm.
So listen, folks, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. If you have any questions for Nicholle, feel free to reach out to her too. And if you're looking for that original episode from a couple of years ago, you can find that on YouTube. But I will bring Nicholle back another time too, because we always like to keep things updated because you never know, right? But it's important that you take your own inventory, and that long-term career management involves a lot of things. And yes, we love the resume. We do love a good LinkedIn profile, but you got to consider the money too, even before you get to the offer letter. So thank you, Nicholle Overkamp from Wilcox Financial Services and Powerhouse Money Coaching. I appreciate that. Thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Kathy.
And everybody, before you take off, make sure that you subscribe to our channel here. Share this with somebody that needs to see it, because I am absolutely certain somebody does. And until we meet again, live inspired.